I don't understand what the correlation is between summertime and vacation. Realistically, you can take your vacation anytime that you want, and yet we are hitting that time of the year where a lot of you are shifting your minds to start thinking about the trip that you've been planning for a while now. As a fat guy from Indiana, it never made sense to me why we would want to go during the hottest time of the year to places that are even hotter. Just sweatier than normal there, so. But there's a breeze. Thanks, Abby. But this is the time of the year where a lot of our minds begin to shift to things like beaches or mountains or lakes or wherever it is that you're planning on going for your trip this year. Or at the very least, you're excited about the day that you finally get done with work for that week and you can take the whole week off, whether that's going somewhere or staying at home or whatever it is that you're choosing to do. There's something about this time of the year. Maybe it's the fact that we're conditioned that as kids we went to school until summertime, and then in summertime we didn't have to go to school anymore, so we just automatically have that association. I don't know exactly what it is, but this is the time of the year where we're all thinking about those trips, and we anticipate that trip all year round, don't we? We get excited about it. We program countdowns on our phones for it so we can, every time we open our phone, we know exactly down to the second when vacation starts. We cross off days on the calendar for it. We do everything that we can to be as prepared as possible for that inevitable trip. Some of us will start buying things or packing things days, weeks, even months before the trip actually is here. Something about that time of getting to go off and relax is just, the anticipation wells up within us to the point that it is palpable. When the girls were little, I'd say between 3 and 5 years of age, we had to be careful about letting them know when a trip was coming up because they would just automatically assume that it was happening right now. When we lived, or when they were those ages, we lived in the state of Illinois, and if we ever wanted to even just go home to Indiana for a weekend, we had to plan that out well ahead of time. I mean, typically the best time for those trips is always the weekends, and I don't know if you realize this about my life, but my weekends are pretty busy. So we would have to be diligent and plan it out. And there was one day in particular I can recall. The girls were maybe 4 years old at this particular point. And Mandy and I were in the kitchen, and we were talking about an upcoming trip to go home. It was going to be about 3 weeks away or so. And one of the girls had come in for a snack, and she overheard us talking about this, and she said, "Wait, we're going to Grandma's?" Now, normally we would answer, "Not for a little while," or we would answer, "Not today." But for whatever reason that day, we said, "Yes, here in a few weeks." But this particular child stopped listening at the word yes. And she scurried off to her room. And we didn't think anything more of it, just kind of went on with the rest of the day. A little bit later, I was sitting in our living room, just kind of hanging out, chilling, was doing, and I heard a noise emanate from the girls' room. Not a loud noise, but definitely an out-of-place noise. And at this particular point in time, we had kind of reached that stage where if we heard a noise coming from the girls' room, we'd give it a moment or two and wait and see if anybody screamed or cried or before we would react. But after I heard that noise and a moment or two passed, I still felt it necessary to go, "Everything okay, girls?" And they yelled back in unison, "Yes." It was always creepy when they did that. Always. So I didn't think anything of it. No harm, no foul, weird noise, everybody's fine, nobody's hurt, nobody's bleeding, we're good. And I just kind of went on about my day. And I didn't find out what that noise was until bedtime that evening. See, the girls shared a bedroom at the time, and they had both of their beds on opposite ends of the room. And when I went in that night to go kiss them goodnight, there was something new in between those beds. There was a suitcase. Somehow, I don't know how, those two little scamps got into Mandy and I's room, were able to get the suitcase out of the closet and bring it into their room, and the only time I heard a noise was when they set the suitcase down. And so, being the inquisitive gentleman that I am, I asked them, "What's the suitcase for?" They said, oh, we just wanted to make sure we were ready for when it was time to go to Grandma's house. 3 weeks away from this trip. And they just told me we wanted to be ready, which means they've packed that suitcase. Now, it's not that I don't doubt that my very independent 4-year-old daughters are capable of packing well, but I still felt the need to find out, what did you pack? And so I go clean shirt that they had in their room. Most of their stuffed animals, but there was 0 pants, 0 undergarments, and 0 socks. 10 out of 10 on packing. I mean, they crushed it. So. And when I asked them, why did you guys feel the need to pack today? We're still weeks away. They said, well, we just want to be ready. They were so excited for the trip, they just wanted to make sure that they were ready for it. Again, there's something about a trip that just makes us exciting. It's exciting when you know that something big and important in your life is coming up in the very near future. Again, whether it's a trip, whether it's a visitor coming to your house, or even something small as just, you're going to your favorite restaurant. For many of you ladies in the room today, that's probably today. You're going to your favorite restaurant. It's exciting. It's something that gets us anticipating it. We look forward to those moments. We look forward to it. We're ready to burst as the time approaches for that trip or that thing to happen. We get excited about it. It's almost like being a kid on Christmas Eve. You can't sleep. You're so amped up. You're so excited about what the next day has to bring for you. It's especially true when it feels like you've waited a very long time for this. When you've waited what feels like an eternity. We know what that feeling is like, don't we? To be so excited about something, but to know it's months, days, weeks, years in the future. We just get so excited about it. But what if it's a day that you never thought you'd actually get to see? Like you always knew it was a possibility. You knew it could happen. But the longer you waited for it, the less likely it felt that it was going to happen. Would you still feel that kind of excitement? Would you still feel that anticipation welling up within you? Because I think it gets harder to continue to wait if you never thought that the day was coming in the first place. It gets harder to wait for a day you never thought was actually going to happen in your life. How do you prepare for something that you weren't sure was ever going to happen? And I ask because it had been literal centuries for the Hebrew people in our text today. Over 400 years before we get to Joseph brought his entire family to come down to Egypt with him. I mean, it makes all the sense in the world. When your family member is the second most powerful man of the most powerful nation in the world, yeah, you pack up and you go. Because you know you're going to be well taken care of. You know that he's going to make sure that everything is going to work out right. You're probably not even worried about so much as a speeding ticket. Right? Cop pulls you over. You say, do you have any idea who my grandfather is? I've always wanted to say that just once, but I've never been comfortable in that situation to actually say that out loud. So maybe one day. But they spent their entire time there, and everything seemed like it was going to go great. And for a while it was. For really an entire generation, everything was fantastic. It was perfect. Life was, dare I say, easy for them. But then, like we saw a couple of weeks ago, you run the risk of something like Exodus chapter 1, verse 8 happening. Which again reads, now there arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph. This new Pharaoh found himself very alarmed over something as threatening as a group of people having a bunch of kids, and then those kids having a bunch of kids. And it created within this leader a sense of paranoia, a worry about what are these people going to do if our enemies try to attack us. Are they going to side with us, or are they going to side with the enemy? Or worse, what if they grow to a point that they are able to overthrow us entirely? And so to alleviate his paranoia, he eventually made it so that they were slaves. And he told his own people that if you see a Hebrew male child, throw it in the river. How paranoid do you have to be to issue a decree to murder babies? And so ever since that day, life for the Hebrew people had been terrible. Every day is a new chapter in the nightmare that is their existence. They are forced into back-breaking labor over and over again to build up a nation that is never going to be theirs, to build up property that is never going to be theirs, all the while mourning children who never got to grow up. So every day is a constant ache, a new depth of pain. Every day of their lives is spent working in the hot Egyptian sun without payment, being treated like property. They're viewed with the same contempt that you might have for the neighbor dog who keeps finding his way into your yard. On top of that, these people have heard the stories over and over again of all the things that the Hebrew God has done for their forefathers. They heard about the ways that he moved for Abraham, the promises he made to Isaac, and how he literally spoke to that other guy. And even how he moved in ways that on the surface never made sense to Joseph. But now it just feels like he's disappeared. Or at the very least, he's forgotten you and your family. He's oblivious to the pain that is taking place in your life. You pray, you constantly plead and beg and demand an answer, just gone silent. How many years do you have to pray before you start to feel like you're wasting your time? But after all that time, after 4 centuries of enduring every single bit of this, all those prayers, all those petitions, all those pleads with God finally bring us to the end of Exodus chapter 2, verse 23, that says their cry for rescue from slavery came up to God. Finally. After years of feeling like they had been forgotten or ignored by God, God has finally listened to them. But the way that God shows up, it's probably not what they expected. Because all of a sudden one day, Moses, this guy who some of the Hebrew people probably knew as a murderer who was raised in Pharaoh's house and disappeared for decades, is now suddenly back. And he's back with his brother Aaron, and the two of them are saying that God has sent them to free them from the Egyptians, that God has told them to go and demand of Pharaoh to let my people go. And there's a part of you that doesn't understand why this dude, this guy who we know killed another guy, something that we're pretty confident God is not real thrilled by, he's going to be our Savior? And when they doubt, Moses and Aaron both perform things in front of them that can really only be described as miraculous. And so even though it doesn't make sense, there's something new that has birthed itself within these browbeaten people, something new that they never thought they would have again, a sensation they thought they had lost. Hope. Hope entered their equation. And in Exodus chapter 4, verse 31, it says, and the people believed. And when they heard that the Lord had visited the people of Israel and that he had seen their affliction, they bowed their heads and worshiped. The long nightmare is almost over. But again, the way out feels kind of weird. See, the first time that Moses and Aaron, they tell the people, we're going to go talk to Pharaoh. We're going to tell him, let us go. It didn't end with Pharaoh saying, cool, see you guys. Instead, it ended with Pharaoh saying, I'm going to make your lives worse. It gets worse? And now all of a sudden they're wondering, well, what is God doing here? This doesn't make any sense. But then Moses tells them, no, don't worry about it. God's going to take care of it. There's about to be some plagues. That's a scary word, isn't it? Anybody read the news this week? You thought 2020 was fun. Let's do it again. I'm not wearing a mask. It really chafes the beard. They thought that the God is going to come and he's going to deliver them, and yet the way he's choosing to deliver them is by experiencing plagues. And I'll be honest, the text is not clear in this, and so there's some speculation as to whether or not the Hebrew people were afflicted by the first three plagues, that being the Nile turning to blood, the gnats, the frogs. Not necessarily in that order. The frogs came second. Yeah. Cool. We don't know if they were afflicted by that. We don't know that for a fact, but the text does tell us specifically in the fourth one, as God is issuing the decree of it in Exodus 8, verse 22, it says, "But on that day I will set apart the land of Goshen, where my people dwell, so that no swarm of flies shall be there, that you may know that I am the Lord in the midst of the earth." Again, on the fifth plague, God still says that the Israelites are immune from it, but those are the only times they're mentioned. I'll give you this information for you to have, I guess. There is some speculation among scholars that because Goshen is so far west of the Nile, that there's a possibility that they didn't endure some of these plagues. But again, that's just speculative. The text does not clearly tell us one way or the other. But it's likely that they still experienced some aftershock effects of these different plagues. So even though they know this is the way out that God is providing for them, that this is eventually going to lead to them getting out of here, they're still having to endure this. In some way, shape, or form, this is still affecting their lives as well. And so I have to imagine that after the 9 different plagues have consumed the entire nation of Egypt, some of the Hebrew people are sitting there wondering, why in the world has Pharaoh not relented? Why are we still here? Moses told us months ago, I've come to release you. We're going to get out of here. Get ready for it. And we're still here. And then Moses gathers the people again. And when he does so, there's an air in the room. There's the sensation that things are really about to change, because when Moses starts telling them about what's going to happen, he makes it seem like this is the one. Things get started in Exodus 11, verses 1 and 2. And it says that the Lord said to Moses, "Yet one plague more I will bring upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. Afterwards, he will let you go from here. And when he lets you go, he will drive you away completely. Speak now in the hearing of the people that they ask every man of his neighbor and every woman of her neighbor for silver and gold jewelry." Moses is to tell the people that it's about time to go, and you need to be prepared. Think about that moment for these people. You had that hope well up within you that God hadn't forgotten you, but after every single plague, you're still there. And so you're not sure what this is going to mean. You're not sure what freedom looks like. You maybe had that optimistic grandma at one point who was going to see the release of the Israelites in her day, but grandma died and didn't see it. And so now you're being told that, hey, this day is coming, that it's going to happen, that you're going to see it. But you've just sat through 9 different plagues that your God has brought about on Egypt. And now Moses has told you, this is the last one. Get ready. Feels kind of serious, doesn't it? See, then Moses goes on to tell them that the last plague is going to be the most effective. And the reason why it's going to be the most effective is because God is about to show up in Egypt and he's going to wipe out every firstborn. Unless you do exactly what I tell you. I don't know about you, I'm going to listen at that point, right? Moses explains to them what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to get a lamb, and that lamb is supposed to be sacrificial. He tells them in Exodus 12, verses 5 and 6, what they're supposed to do with these lambs. It says, "Your lamb shall be without blemish. a male a year old. You may take it from the sheep or from the goats, and you shall keep it until the 14th day of the month, when the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill their lambs at twilight. So let me get this straight. Take a spotless, perfectly innocent lamb and sacrifice it so that you will be spared the judgment that God is. Feels like foreshadowing, doesn't it? Maybe a little foreshadowing of something really important going on generations later. But there's more, and here's where I think that Moses is really stressing the importance of being ready to leave. Right? He knows that God has told him that Pharaoh is going to make them go, and they're going to go tonight. Right? That Pharaoh is going to drive them out of the land, that he is going to demand you get out, and you get out right now. And so they're told to eat the lamb that they sacrificed. And specifically, they're also told to eat unleavened bread. But there's really an interesting note in the preparation of the lamb and of the bread that I think we need to take notice of. And that's in Exodus chapter 12, verses 8 and 9. It says, "They shall eat the flesh that night, roasted on the fire with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. They shall eat it. Do not eat any of it raw or boiled in water, but roasted. Its head with its legs and its inner parts." They're to eat the lamb, for lack of a better word, whole. Why? Why? Well, it's because after you've killed the lamb and you've bloodlet it, it still takes quite a while to butcher a lamb. My Google search history is weird. And this week I added to the weirdness by asking it, how long does it take to butcher a lamb? My government official who's assigned to me probably thinks that I'm up to something. But I learned that to butcher an entire lamb, to get it to the point where we would normally eat lamb chops or something like that, it takes anywhere between 2 and 6 hours. And you don't have that kind of time tonight. Why is the bread unleavened? Well, because if you put a leavening agent in it, like a yeast, it takes time for it to rise. And those of you who have baked before know that can take hours. And you don't have that kind of time. It even tells us something that I find interesting, and if I'm honest with you, kind of fun, because he tells us essentially we're not coming back. In verse 10 it says, "You shall let none of it remain until the morning. Anything that remains until morning you shall burn." And the reason I kind of love that is because whenever Mandy and I are preparing to go on a trip that's more than just a couple of days, we don't want any leftovers in the fridge. Right? The last 3 days before a trip, the meal is whatever's in the fridge. And if there's any leftover stuff in Tupperware, we just pitch it before we leave because we don't want it to be spoiling and stinking up the refrigerator. And God is wanting them to make sure that they know that this trip is going to happen tonight. You're not going to have time to eat it in the morning and you can't take it with you. So burn it. Get rid of it. He even goes so far as to tell them that when they eat, they need to do so quickly and they need to make sure that they are dressed to go. In verse 11, it actually says, "In this manner you shall eat it, with your belt fastened, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. You shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover." So again, imagine this scenario. You've spent your entire life in slavery. Every day has been nothing but terrible for you. You dread waking up in the morning. When you do wake up in the morning, your first thought is, why? And now, you're being told that you're going to leave your slavery. You're getting out of this oppression. You are getting away from these tormentors. And you got to be ready to go. You got to have your stuff packed right now. You got to have the food prepared, but you're going to eat it whole. Whatever you don't eat, you're going to burn. Don't put any yeast in your bread. Have you ever actually had unleavened bread? It is not very much fun to eat. Doesn't have that soft texture that you usually expect with bread. So you're purposely making food worse. And then you got to eat it real fast. Be ready to go. You got to have everything ready. You are dressed. You got your shoes on. So that way, if the word comes while you're eating, go. There's still got to be that part of you that thinks this can't possibly be real. Right? We tend to get so wrapped up and so used to things in our lives that we just assume that this is the way things are. Don't we? The human mind can actually adapt to just about any scenario that you find yourself in. And so for generations, if you've been under slavery, you just assume this is the way that life is for me. You don't want it to be, but that's just the way that life is. And so now you're being told that your entire life is about to some part of you wants to pinch yourself, right? Because you know that your family has talked about for hundreds of years that this day is coming, but generations have come and generations have gone who did not see it. And now, for whatever reason, you get to see something that nobody else from your family has ever seen before. You get to see the end. And finally, after they have prepared and eaten their lambs whole and burned whatever was left over, after they made that terribly dense bread and consumed it too, in the middle of the night, it's finally here. Verses 33 and 34 say the Egyptians were urgent with the people to send them out of the land in haste, for they said, "We shall all be dead." So the people took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading bowls being bound up in their cloaks on their shoulders. Verse 39 says, "And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough that they had brought out of Egypt, for it was not leavened because they were thrust out of Egypt and could not wait, nor had they prepared any provisions for themselves." Moses was right. When it's time to go, we got to go. Can you imagine the feeling as they left? Can you imagine the feeling as they crossed the border out of Egypt? Maybe they saw a big sign that says, "Thank you for visiting Egypt." Can you imagine walking past the homes of your taskmaster, of the people who have made your lives miserable? More than that, the text actually tells us that they were able to, quote unquote, plunder the Egyptians because they would ask, "Hey, do you got any gold or silver you don't want anymore? Can you give it to me?" And they just did. That's weird. Right? If I walked up to you today and said, "Hey, can I have it?" Any takers? I mean, that's actually a serious question. No. But can you imagine the sensation of realizing, no, this is actually happening? That this day I thought was never going to come is here. As Christians, we know and we believe that a day is coming when God is going to do exactly what he said he would do in Revelation 21 verse 4 that says he will wipe away every tear from their eyes. And death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away. We know and we believe that a day is coming when the things of this world are going to end. And a new heaven and a new earth are going. We know and we believe that's going to happen. Right? The thing is, it's really hard to wait when you have no idea when this is going to happen. It's hard to wait for a day that you have no idea what it's going to look like. It's hard to wait for a day when all of that stuff, all the tears are gone, death is gone, mourning, crying, pain is all gone. When the world around you is filled to the brim with pain and hurt and disease and death and corruption and evil. And so even though we've heard guys like me say this stuff before, even though we've heard those sermons, the text ourselves, even though we know that this is what the Word of God has to say, is it coming? It's hard for us to hold on to that, isn't it? Just me? It's really tough to hold on to that hope. And I'm going to be real with you. It's getting harder every day. Can I remind you of something? God's track record is perfect. Every time God said something was going to happen in the scriptures, it happened. The ironic part of the entire slavery in Egypt part is that God told Abraham this was going to happen. Isn't that wild? God told Abraham whenever he made the covenant with him that this is going to be your land, that your people are going to dwell here, that I'm going to build a nation here. He said, but first you're going to have to spend about 400 years in a land that's not their own. And that they're going to be treated harshly. They knew it was coming. God's track record is perfect. Here's the thing. It doesn't happen when we want it to happen. Right? I mean, how many generations believed that the Messiah of God was actually coming before Jesus? And he came out of Nazareth? I'm always dumbfounded by that when one of his disciples is told that he's come from Nazareth, the response is, can anything good come out of Nazareth? Right? But it happened. And so as Christians, even though we know and we believe that this day is coming, and even though it's getting harder and harder for us to hold on to that hope, God's track record is perfect. And so it may not happen when we want it to happen, because I don't know about you, I want it to happen right now. Dang it. And it probably won't happen the way that we think it will. Right? We kind of get in our head of like, oh no, it's going to look like this. Is it? Because I don't think for the Israelites that the murderer coming back and saying, hey, God sent me, I don't think that's the way they thought it was going to happen. I don't think they thought that we're going to have to go through 10 different plagues before Pharaoh finally says, please go. So there's a good chance that the day that God is telling us is going to happen is probably not going to happen the way that we think it's going to happen. But it will happen. Because God's track record is perfect. Unlike any other baseball player, God bats 1,000. He has always been right. It just may not happen the way that we think it's going to happen. But it's still our responsibility as people who believe that that day is coming to be ready for it. Because Jesus himself told us in Luke chapter 12, verses 35 and 36, stay dressed for action. Keep your lamps burning and be like men who are waiting for their master to come home from the so that they may open the door to him at once when he comes and knocks. Christians, when it comes, we got to be ready for it. But while we continue to wait, while we continue to be ready for it, it is also our responsibility. That's a big word, responsibility. I'll even go further. It is also the expectation that we start making sure the people around us are given a chance to prepare for it as well. And we prepare them by telling them of the perfect, spotless Lamb that died to save them from the judgment of God. But how are they going to be ready if you don't tell them? There's a study that was done a couple of years ago, not too awful long ago. And it was kind of polling Christians as to ask them, how did you come to know the Lord, or how did you start going to church, something like that. Some of them answered, well, the preacher invited me, or the preacher told me about it. That was roughly 4%. There's a group of people that said, well, I just was curious one day, and so I went. That was about 4%. The overwhelmingly largest number, at 86, was a friend. Told me, invited me, brought me. Christians, we are preparing for a day to come. And part of that preparation needs to be to prepare others as well. And the truth is that you have a far bigger impact on your friends than I ever could. You have a much better opportunity to bring your friends, your family, your loved ones with you than I do. So how are they going to be prepared if you don't tell them? Paul would write in 1 Thessalonians 5:2-5, for you yourselves are fully aware the Lord will come like a thief in the night. While people are saying then sudden destruction will come upon a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. But you are not in darkness, brothers, as you like a thief. For you are all children of light, children of the day. We are not of the night or of the darkness.